Have you ever wondered why two people can work equally hard, make similar choices, and dream of the same future? Yet one life becomes filled with peace, purpose, and lasting success, while the other remains trapped in constant struggle. Is it luck? Is it talent? Or is there something far more powerful that most people never notice? These questions stayed in Adnan's mind for years. Like millions of others, he believed success meant earning more, achieving more, and owning more. But the more he observed the world, the more he realized that many people gained everything they had wished for, yet still felt empty inside. Others lived simple lives with limited possessions, yet carried a sense of peace, gratitude, and quiet fulfillment that money could never buy. One evening, while reflecting on this mystery, Adnan asked himself a life-changing question. What is the invisible force that gives real value to a person's life? The answer did not come overnight. It revealed itself through experiences, wise conversations, quiet moments of reflection, and lessons hidden within ordinary days. Slowly, one timeless truth became clear. A meaningful life is not built by chasing success alone. It is built by becoming the kind of person who brings goodness, wisdom, honesty, and purpose into every decision. That invisible force is what this book calls Barkat. Before you continue, leave behind every assumption you have about success. The journey ahead is not about becoming someone else. It is about discovering the best version of yourself, and that journey begins now. As you begin this journey with Adnan, remember one simple truth. This book is not here to tell you what to think. It is here to challenge the way you have been thinking. Every chapter invites you to pause, reflect, and ask yourself questions that most people never take the time to answer. What if your greatest limitation is not your circumstances, but the habits you repeat every day? What if the future you dream about is already being shaped by the decisions you make when no one is watching? And what if real success is measured not only by what you achieve, but by the person you become along the way? Throughout this book, you will discover timeless principles that strengthen character, sharpen the mind, build meaningful relationships, develop discipline, and create a life guided by purpose. These are not shortcuts or quick fixes. They are practical ideas that grow stronger only when they are lived consistently. As Adnan continued searching for the true meaning of Barkat, he realized that every meaningful transformation begins with a strong foundation. Without the right foundation, even great success can disappear. But with the right foundation, even the smallest effort can grow into something extraordinary over time. So take a deep breath, open your mind, and leave every distraction behind. The journey toward a life of lasting Barkat starts with a first principle, the foundation upon which everything else is built. Chapter 1. The Foundation of Barkat. The old craftsman's words refused to leave Adnan's mind. For days, he kept asking himself, if character is more valuable than skill, why do so many people spend their lives chasing success while ignoring the person they are becoming? A week later, Adnan returned to the workshop. This time, he noticed something he had missed before. An elderly customer accidentally paid more than the actual price. Without hesitation, the craftsman counted the money, smiled, and handed the extra bills back. The customer looked surprised. "You could have kept it," he said. "I would never have noticed." The old man simply replied, "Maybe you wouldn't have noticed, but I would have. Every choice builds or weakens the person I become." Those words stayed with Adnan for the rest of the day. As he walked home, he realized that every meaningful life is built on a foundation that most people never see. Buildings stand because of the strength beneath them, not because of what is visible from the outside. Human life is no different. Success, reputation, and achievement may attract attention, but they cannot stand for long without honesty, responsibility, and integrity supporting them. That evening, Adnan wrote one sentence in his notebook. A strong life is never built from the top down. It is always built from the foundation up. Without a strong foundation, every future success becomes fragile. But with the right foundation, even the smallest step can become the beginning of something extraordinary. That night, Adnan could not stop thinking about the craftsman's words. He opened his notebook again and asked himself a simple question. What kind of foundation am I building every single day? The answer was not found in his income, his possessions, or the opinions of others. It was hidden in the small decisions he made when no one was watching. The next morning, Adnan returned to the workshop. Instead of asking another question, he quietly observed. As Adnan walked away from the workshop, he realized that the old craftsman had never tried to teach him through long speeches. Instead, every action carried a lesson. That day, Adnan understood that people may admire your success, but they place their trust in your character. From that moment forward, he made a quiet promise to himself. He would no longer measure his progress only by the goals he achieved. He would measure it by the person he became each day. If he could become a little more honest, a little more patient, a little more disciplined, and a little more grateful than he was yesterday, he knew he was moving in the right direction. Before leaving, the old craftsman gave Adnan one final piece of advice. Never build your future on what people expect from you. Build it on values that remain true even when no one is watching. A strong foundation may be invisible, but it is the reason every great life continues to stand. Those words became the first guiding principle of Adnan's journey through Barkat. As he turned the page of his notebook, he wrote one final sentence beneath the first lesson. Your character creates your choices, and your choices create your future. With the foundation now firmly in place, Adnan was ready to discover the invisible force behind every action, every habit, and every decision, the power of the human mind. Chapter 2. Mastering Your Mind. A few days after leaving the workshop, Adnan noticed something unexpected. The lessons he had learned about character were easy to understand, but surprisingly difficult to practice. One small criticism from another person could ruin his entire day. One mistake made him question his abilities. He finally realized that the greatest battle was not happening around him. It was happening inside his own mind. One afternoon, Adnan returned to visit the old craftsman. Before he could ask a question, the old man placed 2 clear glasses of water on the table. Into one glass, he dropped a handful of clean sand. Into the other, he stirred a spoonful of dark soil. Both glasses became cloudy. "Wait," the craftsman said. They sat in silence for several minutes. Slowly, the sand settled to the bottom of the first glass, and the water became clear again. The second glass remained muddy because the soil continued to spread through the water. The old man smiled and asked, "What do you see?" Adnan replied, "One became clear with patience, but the other stayed cloudy." The craftsman nodded. "Your mind works the same way. If you react to every fear, every opinion, and every problem, your thoughts remain cloudy. But when you learn to pause, think, and remain patient, clarity begins to appear." At that moment, Adnan understood that before changing his future, he first had to learn how to master the place where every future decision is born, his own mind. The lesson stayed with Adnan long after he left the workshop. That evening, he sat quietly and began observing his own thoughts instead of immediately believing them. He noticed how one negative thought often invited another, until a small problem felt much bigger than it really was. The next morning, he faced an unexpected challenge. A plan he had worked on for weeks suddenly failed. For a moment, frustration filled his mind. Then he remembered the 2 glasses of water. Instead of reacting, he paused. He took a deep breath, looked at the situation calmly, and asked himself, "What can this experience teach me?" The answer changed everything. He realized that failure is not always a sign to stop. Sometimes it is simply a lesson pointing you toward a better direction. A calm mind searches for solutions, while a restless mind searches for someone to blame. The old craftsman's lesson became clearer than ever. You cannot control every event in your life, he had said, but you can always choose the quality of your response. From that day forward, Adnan made a new habit. Whenever fear, anger, or doubt appeared, he refused to let those emotions make his decisions. He would wait until his mind became clear, just like the first glass of water. That was the moment he discovered another principle of Barkat. A peaceful mind makes wiser decisions, and wise decisions create a better future. As the days passed, Adnan realized that mastering the mind was not something you achieved once. It was a decision you made every single day. Some mornings were filled with confidence, while others brought uncertainty. Yet he discovered that true strength was not the absence of negative thoughts. It was the ability to choose which thoughts deserved his attention. The old craftsman shared one final lesson before Adnan left. Your mind is like the captain of a ship. When the captain stays calm, the ship can survive even the strongest storm. But when the captain panics, even calm waters become dangerous. Those words became one of the most valuable lessons Adnan had ever learned. He understood that every action begins with a thought, every habit begins with a decision, and every future begins with a direction of the mind. If the mind is guided by wisdom, patience, and purpose, the rest of life gradually follows the same path. That evening, Adnan wrote another sentence in his notebook. Guard your mind carefully, because every future you build first exists as a thought. With a stronger foundation and a clearer mind, Adnan was ready for the next challenge. He now understood that clear thinking alone was not enough. Lasting change would come only through the small actions repeated every day. And that is where he would discover the quiet power of daily habits. Chapter 3. The Power of Daily Habits. The following week, Adnan believed he was finally ready to change his life. He had learned about character. He had learned how to control his mind. Yet after a few days, he noticed something disappointing. His old routines quietly returned. He stayed distracted longer than he intended, postponed important tasks, and kept telling himself, "I'll start tomorrow." Seeing this, the old craftsman handed Adnan a small clay pot and a single seed. "Plant this," he said. "Then come back in a month." Adnan looked confused. "Can one tiny seed really teach me anything?" The craftsman smiled. "The seed is not the lesson. What you do every day is." Adnan planted the seed that evening. The next morning, nothing had changed. A week passed, and still there was almost nothing to see. For a moment, he wondered if the effort was pointless. But he remembered the craftsman's advice and continued watering the soil every single day. Days later, a small green sprout finally appeared. In that quiet moment, Adnan understood something he had never fully appreciated before. Great results are almost always invisible at the beginning. Progress happens beneath the surface long before it becomes visible to the world. The old craftsman later smiled and said, "Your habits are no different from that seed. Every small action you repeat is quietly growing into the person you will become." That lesson became the beginning of Adnan's understanding that extraordinary lives are built through ordinary actions practiced consistently. Every morning, Adnan watered the small plant before doing anything else. Some days he felt motivated. Other days he did not. But he noticed something important. The plant never depended on his emotions. It grew because it received consistent care. One afternoon, the old craftsman asked, "What would happen if you watered the plant only when you felt inspired?" Adnan smiled and replied, "It would slowly die." The craftsman nodded. That is exactly what happens to dreams. Many people believe success belongs to those with the strongest motivation. In reality, it belongs to those with the strongest habits. Those words changed the way Adnan viewed his daily routine. He realized that every repeated action was casting a vote for the person he wanted to become. Reading a few pages, speaking honestly, managing his time wisely, and keeping his promises seemed like small actions, yet together they were shaping his future. He also discovered that bad habits work in the same way. They rarely damage a life overnight. Instead, they grow quietly through small choices repeated again and again until they become difficult to break. That evening, Adnan wrote another lesson in his notebook. Your future is not created by what you do once. It is created by what you choose to do consistently. For the first time, he understood that Barkat grows through daily habits long before it appears in daily results. A month later, Adnan returned to the workshop carrying the small clay pot. The tiny seed had grown into a healthy young plant. Looking at it, the old craftsman smiled with quiet satisfaction. "Do you see the difference now?" he asked. Adnan nodded. "The plant did not grow because of one day of effort. It grew because I cared for it every single day." The craftsman replied, "Exactly. Your future follows the same principle. People admire the results they can see, but they rarely notice the habits that created them." As Adnan walked home, he began looking at every ordinary task differently. Waking up on time, keeping his word, Learning something new, showing kindness, and using his time wisely were no longer small actions. They were daily investments in the person he was becoming. That evening, he wrote another sentence in his notebook. Habits are the quiet architects of destiny. They shape your future long before the world sees the results. From that day forward, Adnan stopped searching for quick success. Instead, he focused on building daily routines that reflected his values. He understood that when good habits become part of your character, lasting Barkat naturally follows. With this lesson firmly rooted in his heart, Adnan was ready for the next chapter of his journey, discovering how strong relationships, built on trust, respect, and kindness, can multiply the goodness in every area of life. Chapter 4. Relationships that multiply Barkat. One afternoon, Adnan noticed that the old craftsman's workshop was busier than ever. Customers waited patiently, not because his prices were the lowest, but because they trusted him completely. Some had traveled long distances, while others had been coming to him for years. Curious, Adnan asked, "How did you earn so much trust?" The old craftsman smiled and pointed toward an old wooden bridge behind the workshop. "Come with me." As they stood beside the bridge, the craftsman said, "Look carefully. This bridge has carried thousands of people for many years. Do you know why they cross it without fear?" Adnan examined the bridge and replied, "Because they trust that it is strong." The craftsman nodded. "Exactly. Trust is built the same way. One strong plank cannot hold a bridge together. It is the result of many strong pieces connected over time. Relationships are no different. One honest action earns respect, another strengthens it, and the next day, Adnan returned to the workshop and found a young customer standing quietly near the door. He looked disappointed. The craftsman walked over, listened patiently without interrupting, and spoke with kindness instead of judgment. Within a few minutes, the young man's worried expression had changed into one of hope. As they watched him leave, Adnan asked, "You didn't solve his problem. Why did he leave smiling?" The old craftsman replied, "Because sometimes people don't need perfect answers. They need someone who listens with sincerity and treats them with respect." Those words stayed with Adnan throughout the day. He began paying closer attention to the people around him. He noticed that strong relationships were rarely built through grand gestures. They were strengthened by simple habits: keeping promises, expressing gratitude, admitting mistakes, offering encouragement, and being present when someone needed support. He also learned that every relationship faces moments of misunderstanding. In those moments, pride creates distance, but humility creates understanding. Choosing to forgive, to apologize sincerely, or to have an honest conversation often repairs what anger would only destroy. That evening, Adnan added another sentence to his notebook. "People may remember your achievements for a while, but they remember the way you treated them for a lifetime." As his understanding of relationships grew, Adnan realized that trust opens doors, but purpose gives those relationships direction. His next lesson would teach him how a clear purpose transforms ordinary effort into a meaningful life filled with lasting Barkat. A few weeks later, Adnan noticed something he had never fully understood before. The old craftsman's greatest success was not the furniture he built, it was the people who trusted him. Customers returned with their families, friends recommended his workshop, and former customers often visited simply to thank him. His reputation had been built one relationship at a time. Seeing Adnan's curiosity, the old craftsman shared one final lesson. Never ask how many people know your name. Ask how many people feel safe trusting your character. Respect earned through honesty will always outlast attention gained through appearance. Those words gave Adnan a new perspective. He realized that every conversation was an opportunity to build trust or weaken it. Every promise kept strengthened a relationship, while every broken promise quietly damaged it. True influence was never created by impressing people. It was created by serving them with sincerity and consistency. That evening, Adnan opened his notebook once again and wrote, "Relationships are the mirrors of your character. The trust you build today becomes the support you receive tomorrow." As he closed the notebook, Adnan understood that strong relationships could open many doors, but they could not decide which direction to walk. That decision required something even deeper: a clear purpose. With a stronger character, a disciplined mind, healthy habits, and trustworthy relationships, Adnan was finally ready to discover the next principle of Barkat: living a life guided by purpose instead of simply chasing success. Chapter 5: Purpose Before Success. After months of learning, Adnan noticed that his life had become more disciplined, his habits were stronger, and his relationships had improved. Yet one question still remained unanswered. What is all of this for? The next morning, he found the old craftsman standing beside a river, watching the water flow. Without turning around, the craftsman asked, "Tell me, Adnan, what happens to a boat that has no destination?" Adnan thought for a moment and replied, "It keeps moving, but it never truly arrives anywhere." The old man smiled. Exactly. Many people spend their entire lives working hard, staying busy, and chasing success. But without a clear purpose, they are like that boat. They move constantly, yet they never experience real fulfillment. As they watched the river, Adnan realized that being busy and being purposeful were not the same thing. Activity alone could not create a meaningful life. Every action needed a direction, and every direction needed a reason. The craftsman picked up a small stone and gently dropped it into the water. "A single choice creates many ripples," he said. In the same way, one clear purpose influences every decision you make. It shapes your habits, your relationships, and even the way you respond to challenges. That evening, Adnan wrote another lesson in his notebook. Success tells the world what you achieved. Purpose reminds you why you started. For the first time, he understood that the greatest achievements are not built by ambition alone. They are guided by a meaningful purpose. The conversation by the river stayed with Adnan for many days. Instead of asking, "How can I become more successful?" he began asking a different question. "How can I make every day more meaningful?" A few days later, the old craftsman gave Adnan a simple task. He handed him a compass and asked him to walk through a nearby forest until sunset. When Adnan returned, the craftsman asked, "Did the compass remove every obstacle from your path?" "No," Adnan replied. "I still crossed rough ground, climbed hills, and walked around fallen trees." The old man smiled. That is exactly what purpose does. It doesn't remove life's difficulties. It keeps you moving in the right direction despite them. At that moment, Adnan understood that many people lose years of their lives because they confuse distractions with opportunities. They chase whatever shines the brightest, only to discover they have wandered far from what truly matters. That evening, Adnan wrote another sentence in his notebook. Purpose is the compass of life. It does not promise an easy journey, but it keeps you from losing your direction. From that day forward, every important decision became easier. Whenever a new opportunity appeared, Adnan first asked whether it matched his values and purpose. If it did, he moved forward with confidence. If it did not, he had the courage to walk away. As his purpose became clearer, Adnan realized that knowing the right direction was only the beginning. The next challenge would be staying committed to that direction every single day through the quiet strength of discipline. As the seasons changed, Adnan noticed something remarkable. The people who seemed happiest were not always the richest or the most successful. They were the ones who woke up each morning knowing why they were doing what they did. Their purpose gave meaning to their work, strength to their struggles, and hope during difficult times. One evening, Adnan asked the old craftsman, "How do I know if I am following the right purpose?" The old man smiled and replied, "Ask yourself 3 questions. Does this path help you become a better person? Does it bring benefit to others? And can you pursue it without compromising your values? If the answer is yes, keep walking, even if progress feels slow." Those words became one of the greatest lessons of Adnan's journey. He realized that purpose is not about becoming famous or admired. It is about living each day with honesty, responsibility, kindness, and determination. When your purpose is rooted in strong values, success becomes a byproduct rather than the destination. That night, Adnan opened his notebook and wrote, "A meaningful life is not measured by how far you travel, but by the direction you choose and the good you leave behind." As he closed the notebook, he understood that purpose had given his life direction. But direction alone was not enough. To continue walking that path through every challenge, distraction, and setback, he would need one final strength: discipline. And with that realization, Adnan stepped into the next chapter of Barkat, ready to discover the quiet power that turns purpose into reality. Chapter 6: Living a Life of Barkat. Months had passed since Adnan first stepped into the old craftsman's workshop. He had arrived searching for the secret of success, but he was leaving with something far more valuable: a new way of living. On his final visit, the old craftsman handed Adnan the same notebook he had filled throughout his journey. "Open the first page," he said. Adnan read the sentence he had written months earlier. "A strong life is never built from the top down. It is always built from the foundation up." He slowly turned each page. Every lesson was there: character, a disciplined mind, daily habits, meaningful relationships, purpose, and discipline. For the first time, he realized these were never separate lessons. They were pieces of one complete picture. The old craftsman smiled and said, "People spend years searching for the key to a better life, never realizing that the key has been in their hands all along. Every honest choice, every kind word, every disciplined action, and every moment of gratitude quietly unlocks the next door." Adnan closed the notebook and looked around the simple workshop one last time. Nothing about the place had changed. The same wooden benches, the same tools, and the same peaceful atmosphere remained. The only thing that had truly changed was the person standing inside it. That evening, Adnan wrote one final lesson before closing his notebook. When your character changes, your decisions change. When your decisions change, your life begins to change. With a grateful heart, Adnan prepared for the final lesson of Barkat, not about learning more, but about living everything he had learned, every single day. The next morning, before sunrise, Adnan stood outside the old workshop one last time. The door was closed, the street was quiet, and the world seemed unchanged. Yet deep inside, he knew he was no longer the same person who had first arrived searching for the secret of success. As he prepared to leave, the old craftsman walked outside and handed him a small wooden key. Adnan looked at it with surprise. "This key doesn't open any door," the old man said with a gentle smile. "It is only a reminder. The real keys are the principles you have learned. Whenever life becomes difficult, remember that honesty opens trust, discipline opens progress, kindness opens hearts, and purpose opens the future." Adnan held the wooden key in his hand and realized it was never about the object. As Adnan walked away from the workshop, he did not carry a bag of treasures or a book of secrets. He carried something far more valuable: a new way of seeing the world. He now understood that Barkat was never hidden in extraordinary moments. It was found in ordinary days lived with honesty, gratitude, discipline, patience, and purpose. Years later, whenever people asked Adnan what had changed his life, he never spoke about a shortcut to success. Instead, he shared a simple truth: your future is shaped by the choices you make when no one is watching. Protect your character, guard your thoughts, build strong habits, value people, live with purpose, and remain disciplined. The rest will follow in its own time. Those words became the foundation of everything he taught. He had learned that success could bring comfort, but only strong character could bring lasting peace. Wealth could create opportunities, but wisdom determined how those opportunities were used. Every principle of Barkat worked together, turning ordinary actions into an extraordinary life. That evening, Adnan opened his notebook one final time and wrote his last lesson. A life of Barkat is not built in a single moment. It is built one honest decision, one kind action, and one disciplined day at a time. He gently closed the notebook, looked toward the horizon with gratitude, and smiled. His search for the secret of a meaningful life had ended, but his responsibility to live those principles had only just begun. The story had reached its final page, but the next chapter now belonged to every reader who chose to live the principles of Barkat. If you have reached this final page, thank you for allowing Barkat to become part of your journey. This book was never meant to give you a shortcut to success. It was written to remind you that the strongest lives are built from the inside out. Every lesson you discovered, from character and mindset to habits, relationships, purpose, and discipline, points toward one timeless truth: The quality of your life is shaped by the quality of your daily choices. As Adnan's journey comes to an end, your own journey is only beginning. The notebook is now in your hands. Every decision you make, every promise you keep, every act of kindness you offer, and every challenge you face with patience becomes a new